Okay, so we are going to talk about allergies as it relates to POTS and what was going on with my body, because this comment really piqued my interest. So before I talk about it, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Everything that I'm about to share is simply me putting together the pieces of my own journey in terms of understanding POTS and understanding inflammation in the body. So when I think about POTS, my nervous system is very deeply affected by this diagnosis. Now, it is different for everybody, but I have learned how to understand that my nerves are pretty much like shot. So my entire job when it comes to neutralizing what's going on in me is calming down my nervous system. And the way that I do that is using like box breathing, meditation. I do very gentle things. But when I am triggered, say I have like a stressful day or I see something distressing, I have to do extra things to kind of like bring my entire nervous system back down. And this is mainly because like my nervous system no longer has like normal responses. It really goes from like 0 to 100. So I'm trying to train it to jump from like 0 to 20 instead when I get triggered by something as simple as like the AC fan turning on. That can cause me to like jump, but I'm working on getting my body to just kind of like peak just a little bit. And the reason that this is all important is because back in 2020, I started having really heightened allergic reactions to unknown things. Now, prior to 2020, I had probably had like 1 or 2 blips on the radar of me being allergic to something, but I never really registered what it was. One time that stands out is me being in my apartment and I lit a candle. And all of a sudden, I just like started not feeling well. Like I got really hot, really nauseous. I had difficulty breathing. And so blew out the candle, opened the window, never really thought about it again. I just thought it was weird. But in 2020, what began happening is I started having these like very intense, sporadic, unpredictable episodes where I would get incredibly hot, my face would go flush, and I would go like red around my eyes and around my mouth. And this happens probably like 2 or 3 times without my throat ever closing or without my tongue getting itchy. It was kind of just like, oh, okay, we're having a response, don't know what it is. So because my throat wasn't closing, because I didn't have any like itchiness, I didn't read it as an allergic reaction. I simply was just like, oh, that's super weird. And I thought it was from products that I was using. So I went to the dermatologist and they pretty much were like, this is perioral dermatitis. Here is a topical steroid, do your thing. And I used the topical steroid for a little bit, which helped. But the thing is, the moment that I came off of the steroid or I stopped using it, it would all come flooding back. So that led me to believe that something else was going on and I needed to go deeper. So I went to the allergist. And before I get to the allergist, what's really important about this story, and the reason I told you all about like the nervous system responses in the beginning, is because there is one episode in 2020 where I was crying. I had been like totally fine, not emotionally, but like totally fine physically looking. And I had cried a lot in like a really isolated period. And after I calmed my body down from crying, no less than 5 minutes later, I got really hot, completely flush, and I got the red rings. So that already tells me that this was not only an inflammatory response, but a nervous system response. Something was going on, because if my body's having that extreme reaction without triggers, what I thought to be like allergic triggers, then my nervous system is already at play in this dynamic. So I went to the allergist after this, and it took me like, I had to do not only the arm testing, but I had to do the back patch testing for 3 days. And what came out was that I had 5 allergies that were very specific that had been accumulating over time. Because prior to this, I really hadn't been allergic to anything. So what I did was my allergist gave me an app that allowed me to see like what products I could use that like didn't have any of my allergies in them. And I really stuck to that. So I changed all of my makeup, I changed my soaps, everything to align with what was like in this app, mainly fragrance-free stuff. And when I did that, I basically stopped having all of these reactions, except for times when my nervous system was in distress, like that time that I was crying. So it took a while, right? Like it takes a few months for your body to like lower that inflammation, to get all of the allergies out, and for you to be in a space where you're like, okay, we're fine. So when I changed all my products, after about 6 months, like I'm good. I thankfully, knock on wood, have not had that type of response. But when I get really upset, I can feel it come on. So I can feel kind of like the heat trickle up. I don't get the redness in my face anymore, but I can feel it kind of start. Now, if I am around one of my allergic triggers, so fragrance, if I hug one person with perfume, I basically know that I need to like take a step back, breathe in fresh air, just get space. Like it's okay for a really brief contact. If I am at a party with 100 people who are all wearing perfume and cologne, chances are I need to take a Claritin or a Benadryl or something ahead of time in order to prevent that allergic reaction. When I have like really brief interactions with stuff, I can feel the allergy come on in different ways. So for me, like my eyelids get really itchy, or I get itchy like right in the corner of my mouth. And when that happens, I already know that I've been triggered. But other triggers are harder to find. So I'm allergic to formaldehyde. And I had like tested out a new pillow and I slept on it for like a few months. And by the end of the few months, I was having allergic reactions, like my throat would start to close, or I would just feel like tightness in my chest. My tongue would get really itchy, completely sporadically away from my bed or away from the pillow. And it took me forever to figure out what that was. But that is why I am constantly now vigilant about what will inflame my body, both from an allergic standpoint and from a nervous system standpoint. Because if I combo those two things together, chances are I'm going to have an extremely heightened response. And my entire goal of this is to not have that happen.